think it's one of those things that government just does not want to let go of everything. There is, and then, there are still in some governments that they want to manage the budget in the power sector, and you want to put it in transmission. And transmission also has a space for political decisions where you extend the grid to maybe places that are not quite, they're not bankable, they're not economically, financially bankable at the time. So there's a strategic reason for government, but they must find a way to let go of the main grid system, especially now that there are other solutions that you can use to deal with far-flung areas like mini-grids, but we have to find a solution that allows private capital to come drive transmission.
Egypt's positioning in terms of improving the business environment, in making sure the ports are modernized, that we have the sound and well-connected railways. We are also moving forward with renewable energy projects, and we'll be exporting some of that energy to our sisters and brothers in Africa. We are all about bonding and a stronger continent, inclusive for all. So this is what we're heading for. We want to see a more prosperous Africa.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Hi guys, my name is Folu Storms. You're watching News Central TV.
My name is Aina Davis and you're watching News Central Television.
Hello, I'm Mona Taha. You're watching News Central.
Hi, my name is Patrick Dante, okay? And you're watching News Central.
Bonjour, je suis Delphine Lopez et vous regardez News Central.
Hi, my name is Nkesi.
Hi, my name is Cynthia.
And you're watching News Central.
Africa First.
Africa First.
Africa First.
Africa First.
Africa First.
On one slot, we'll be looking at African solutions to African problems. I'll be talking to those who are in the corridors of power or have walked the corridors of power right here. Join me every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. West African time for one slot on News Central.
As reporters, we don't just gather news stories, we experience them daily. So join us on Report Desk Africa as we share these experiences and review the top African stories every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. West African time, only on News Central.
my name is Nadia Nakai, and I'm a rapper that originates from South Africa.
Yo, my name is Deliver Julio. Mentally together with the B2C soldiers. Kampala boys from Uganda.
Alors je souhaite bonne année.
We are Tara and Bella.
My name is Loco.
Shout out News Central.
À la chaîne News Central.
News Central, Africa first.
Africa first.
Keep watching News Central Africa first.
We live in a very patriarchal society, and so sometimes women are socialized at home not to come forward, not to take those roles, subservient roles. So we as women, as mothers, we must make sure that as we bring up our kids, we bring them up as equals so that young women do not feel intimidated. And that's why it's important to have an inner strength, to be confident in yourself, and also to have support of other women.
This is the beginning of a movement, a time that marks a turning point in African broadcasting. We refuse to be held back. We are taking our stories and sharing them in our voices. The world will hear Africa's true voice and follow her authentic story. Join us right here on News Central TV as we make history by telling stories that put Africa first.
Hello and welcome to NC Exclusive. I am Benga Aborowa. We have a very special guest today. His name is His Excellency Mr. Abdulla Shahid. He is widely recognized as an exceptional politician and a seasoned diplomat with a long and distinguished career serving in both the government and legislature of Maldives. Since his appointment as Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2018, for the second time, Mr. Shahid has worked incessantly to reposition Maldives as a responsible and respected member of the international community by renewing previously strained relationships and building new ones, both in the bilateral and the multilateral domains. He has reinvigorated the country's efforts in the multilateral arena and led national efforts to rejoin the Commonwealth after a 4-year hiatus. As a strong advocate for gender equality, he is credited with achieving gender parity amongst the country's diplomatic heads of missions for the first time, as well as in the country's foreign service. Mr. Shahid's illustrious parliamentary career spanned 25 years, during which time he participated in and oversaw major legislative progress and reform. He was a member of Parliament for 5 consecutive terms from 1994 to 2018. Mr. Shahid holds a master's degree in International Relations from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University and completed his undergraduate degree in Political Science and Government at the University of Canberra. On the 7th of June 2021, Mr. Abdulla Shahid was overwhelmingly elected as President of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, garnering 143 votes out of the 191 ballots, being the first President-elect of the General Assembly from the Maldives in the 75-year-old history of the United Nations and in 55 years since the Maldives became a United Nations member. Our guest today is His Excellency Abdulla Shahid, President of the 76th United Nations General Assembly. Congratulations on your elections as President of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Venga. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be on this program today.
We're happy.
Thank you for that very kind introduction.
We're happy to have you too, Mr. President. Now, your tenure started in unprecedented times in the middle of a global pandemic. How would you describe your time in office so far?
It's not the most good time a diplomat would look for to be the President of the General Assembly. But it's a challenging time. It's a time when one would want to do what little you can to make sure that you contribute to upliftment of humanity. And that is why I chose a presidency of hope as the theme for my presidency. I wanted to give a message of hope to the people of the world who have gone through over 20 months of despair, death, devastation, and frustration. Each one of us have lost loved ones. Each one of us have gone through so many difficulties. And I wanted to give that message of hope. I wanted to ask the leadership of the countries to tell their people that together we will be able to have a better tomorrow, that we have the capacity, we have the technology, we have the means to collectively, through the United Nations, lift ourselves up for a better tomorrow. And that is what I wanted to do.
Mr. President, I'm happy you mentioned the theme hope, because in your inaugural address to the United Nations General Assembly, you said you will pursue 5 rays of hope that will direct the efforts of the 193-member General Assembly this year. Can you please talk us through these 5 pillars of hope that will guide your presidency?
That is right. I wanted to build my presidency on 5 rays of hope. And number 1, of course, is recovering from COVID-19. I believe that we need to recover from this pandemic if we want to move from where we are today. If we want humanity to survive, we need to recover from this pandemic. And in order to recover from the pandemic, the way out is vaccination. We need to vaccinate the world. In my inaugural speech, I spoke about vaccinating the world. And I sincerely believe that the international community has the means of vaccinating the world. It is totally unacceptable that some of the countries in the developing world, especially in Africa, are able to get only 5% of its population vaccinated, while in other parts of the world, especially in the developed countries, we are going for the booster jab. This is unacceptable. And I want to address this vaccine gap. I'm convening a high-level meeting in January the 13th, to bring the countries together, the leadership of countries together, with vaccine producers, with civil society, with other international partners who are involved in vaccine production, distribution, to give that confidence to the people that yes, we can and we will vaccinate the world. Number 2, of course, is rebuilding sustainably. We launched ourselves in 2020 into a decade of action. However, the pandemic has totally taken us off rail. we are unable to keep our targets for the SDGs. The 2030 agenda has been derailed. The decade of action which we came promising for our people is not achievable at this point in time. Once again, for the least developed countries, small island states and the landlocked countries and the LDCs, what is happening is that the meager resources that we had in order to achieve the SDGs in our national budgets have been channeled to combat the pandemic. And we need at this point in time to reorient ourselves to rebuild sustainably. It is good that the LDC 5 conference is coming up in Doha. It is going to be a conference where we will be able to have once in a decade opportunity to adopt a transformative program of action to achieve sustainable development goals. And this is the right time for it. And I'm going to concentrate on it. My third ray of hope is responding to the needs of the planet. We can feel, we can see our Mother Earth in pain. We can see that glaciers are melting, forest fires are raging, desert is expanding, sea levels are rising, unprecedented floods are taking place, storms are raging much, much stronger than it used to. These are clear signs of what consequences come to Mother Earth. We need to respond to the needs of the planet. And during my presidency, it is a very pleasant coincidence that 5 major international conferences on climate is coming up. I come from a very small, low-lying island state, and for me, the issue of climate change and responding to the needs of the planet is an existential issue, and therefore my presidency will concentrate on attending to the needs of the planet. I will be convening a high-level meeting in July next year to bring countries together once again to take stock of the 5 major conferences that are going to be held and see where we have succeeded, where we have not, and why we have not, and what needs to be done. The fourth ray of hope is respecting the rights of all. In the United Nations and in the international community, the rights approach has to be always highlighted. And during the pandemic, for example, when countries went into lockdown, whether it is global north or global south, for example, women and girls suffered most. Domestic violence increased and many, many other things. Children were left behind because they couldn't attend school. The psychological impact of it on children and vulnerable groups were immense. The rights, human rights needs to be right center and of our agenda, and I want to concentrate on it, especially on gender. It would take 135.6 years if the current trajectory for gender balance is going to be maintained. And that is not acceptable for me. I will do whatever little that I can to make sure that this issue of gender is going to be always at the center of our debate. I have proposed that my office will be gender balanced. I have achieved that, including at the senior level. I have a gender balanced office. I've also pledged that I will not participate in any panel that is not gender balanced. I have kept that promise and I intend to keep it. I'm also in touch with women leaders around the world to give the message of hope to young women and girls that they can achieve their aspirations. And the other priority is youth. Today we have 1.8 billion youth around the world. And this is the largest youth population that humanity has ever seen. And we need to make sure that youth is engaged in multilateralism and they understand what multilateralism is about, what peaceful settlement of disputes is, of conflict is, And for that, I'm introduced, taken an initiative of establishing Presidency of Hope Youth Fellowship Program, where young diplomats from underrepresented countries will have an opportunity to come and work with me so that they will understand how we work, where we succeed, but more importantly, where we fail and why we fail. And they will, when they become leaders in their countries, and it is time for them to decide and make decisions, they will understand what multilateralism is all about. And of course, the fifth ray of hope is revitalizing the United Nations. We need to make the United Nations strong, effective, and relevant. And when we speak about relevance, for example, the Security Council of the United Nations, there's a historical injustice to the continent of Africa. When we look at the Security Council, there is no representation of Africa within the permanent 5 members. These injustices need to be rectified. And I intend to do whatever little I can during my term of 12 months to attend to these things. I may not be able to solve all these things, but if I can contribute in what little way I can, I think I would have achieved a little bit of inspiring hope to the people around the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I must say that a lot of, if not all the pillars you mentioned would chart the channel for our discussion today and the course of our interview. Now, I'm happy you talked about COVID-19, dealing with vaccine equity, unequal access to vaccines and all of that, and you plan to call a meeting to address that. Now, your candidacy for the position of President of the General Assembly was built around the theme of hope, given what is currently happening in Africa with what His Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, described as nothing less than travel apartheid. And given the continued waves of COVID, unequal access to vaccines and continued strife around the world, how do you plan to bring hope to the General Assembly, especially to people of Africa?
Well, to say the least, the response by many countries on this new variant, Omicron, has been knee-jerk. This is the least I can say. The African nations who were able to find the genetic sequencing of this new variant, they were so responsible in telling the rest of the world, look, we have found this new variant. But for them, for sharing this very important information with the rest of the world, for that, those countries have been penalized. Now, this is not responsible. It is totally unacceptable. These instances should be rewarded. And the Omicron virus, I spoke to the Director General of WHO 3 days back, and according to the Director General, he is yet to receive the detailed information of what impacts it would take. He said it's too early for him to say. But then the knee-jerk reaction of many countries have really been quite irresponsible. The level of fear mongering has gone beyond. I hope that countries will be more responsible in dealing with these new variants that are going to come up. And also the new variant is there because of the failure of the international community as a whole. We clearly know that no one is safe until everyone is safe. And for that, we need vaccines, not in the developed countries alone. We need it in Africa. We need it in other developing countries. We need to make sure that we understand the message that the COVID pandemic has brought to us. That message is very clear. That is, no one is safe until everyone is safe. On January 13th, when I bring countries together, I'm going to continue to reiterate this message that no one is safe until everyone is safe, and the only way out of this is to vaccinate the world. And let us do it together. I believe that we have the capacity, I believe we have the know-how, and I believe we have the means to do it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another issue on your 5 pillars that would set the ball for your presidency is the issue of climate change. The 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP26, ended in Glasgow, Scotland a few weeks ago with verdict for most observers as not enough has been done to reduce emissions consistent with avoiding dangerous climate change in decades to come. Your home country, as you said earlier, Maldives, like many other countries, is highly susceptible to the adverse effects of climate change. What are your priorities and strategies in dealing with climate change in your presidency?
You're right. We in the Maldives started talking about climate change way back in the 1980s, 87 to be precise. The president of Maldives at that time, attending the Commonwealth Summit in Vancouver, raised this issue of climate change and sea level rise, which was a totally new topic for many of the leaders around the table. From Vancouver, President came to New York, and in the General Assembly, he raised the same issue. In those days, the challenge for us, small island countries, was to convince the rest of the world that this is going to be the fate of not only the Maldives and the small island state, but also the entire world. In fact, our slogan was, "Our fate today will be yours tomorrow." But the reaction has been so far, until recently, it has been that these small islands with little population and the coastal areas, they can perish. But then, just like the pandemic, climate change is an issue where no one is safe until everyone is safe. And that is being clearly demonstrated today by the raging forest fires, the melting glaciers, the expanding deserts, and the storms, raging storms. All these are making sure that humanity understands that it is not only the fate of small islands who are going to be inundated by the sea, but also those who are on higher ground are going to face the consequences of climate change now. And I think that is the result of this very clear, vivid experience of many, many countries. The result is that today in COP26, for example, when I was there, a large number of countries have declared their NDCs. Now it is not whether they would declare it, but it is how much ambition they have. But at least they have decided that yes, this is going to affect us now. It's not only the small island states that are going to go through it. When you look at COP26, I went there with a message of hope. I convened on October 26th a high-level meeting here at the General Assembly to bring once again countries together, to give political impetus to the debate. At the conference, at the inaugural session of the conference, I told the members that we should have the courage to step back from the edge of the cliff. We are on the edge of the cliff. We should have the political strength, political courage to step back before we go off the cliff. Yes, COP26 was not a great success, but at least it kept the 1.5 alive. Even on the ventilator, it is alive. What we have to understand is that when we negotiate with the 193 countries, we may all not get what we want, but if we can keep on trying, if we can keep on moving, we will get there. And I'm very hopeful that build up to Cairo is the target that we have to have now, and we will be able to get progress by the time we reach Cairo. The question is how long countries like ours can actually survive. And that is why it is an existential threat to us. And that is why we will keep on talking and fighting for this. Because for us, there is no high ground. The only high ground we have is the moral high ground, and we are going to stick with the moral high ground.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And the hope is that by the time we get to COP27, the world would have been able to move the needle positively forward. Now, regarding your fifth pillar, that's reforming the United Nations, there have been many calls for an urgent reform of the United Nations Security Council. I'm sure you might agree with me that current geopolitical realities and the global health crisis make a compelling argument for African representation. Do you support a reform of the United Nations and Africa's call for permanent representation in the United Nations Security Council?
As the President of the General Assembly, I can't take part in this debate. I facilitate the debate, but it is a reality that the Security Council needs to reflect the current realities of the world. It cannot go on the way it is been. It was formed in 1945 and later with the expansion which was agreed in the 1960s. We need to move forward. When the agenda item on expansion and revitalizing reform of the Security Council was included in the General Assembly agenda, one amongst the 10 countries who initiated it was Maldives, and Maldives took part as the initiator of this agenda item resolution, because we believe that we need to move forward. And the irony of the whole thing is, and it's coming down to be very, very sad, because when this agenda item was included in the agenda of the United Nations, I was only 19 years old. And now I'm presiding over the General Assembly, and still the matter is there. So if there's anything I could do to make it happen, I will do. But unfortunately, as the President of the General Assembly, I can only facilitate. I do not have the magic wand, but I will continue to talk about the historical injustices to the global south, to Africa, and the clear need for the Security Council to be reflecting the current realities of the international community.
Thank you very much for your acknowledgement, Mr. President. Now, terrorism is a global phenomenon and a genuine threat to peace and stability in some parts of Africa, especially the Sahel region. As we speak, the Comprehensive Convention and International Terrorism Treaty has been under negotiation for many years now, and as we speak, Mr. President, consensus is yet to be reached. How important is this in the global fight against terrorism, and are you hopeful a consensus might be reached under your presidency?
The need for clear messaging by the United Nations is of great importance today, and as it has been always. The longer we delay agreement on the terrorism treaty, the convention that is being negotiated in the 6th Committee, the more mixed messages the international community sends to terrorists, that the international community's inability to come together, that message is not what we should be sending right now. We should be sending a stronger message of unity and solidarity of the international community, of intolerance to any forms of terrorism. My first General Assembly session here at the United Nations was when I was much, much younger, in 1988. and I participated in, attended the 6th committee, which is the legal committee which deals with these issues. And it is heartbreaking to see that I come back after so many years and see the same convention being negotiated in the same committee and with no progress. And unfortunately, even during my presidency, did not make any progress on that matter. But we need there is this highly urgent need for countries to come together and make sure that we agree on how we will deal with terrorism.
Now, Mr. President, finally, given your vast experience and your long career as a seasoned diplomat and currently as President of the United Nations General Assembly, what future do you think multilateralism holds in solving global problems? And what would you say to those who question the ability of multilateral organizations, including the United Nations, to put an end to conflicts in Syria, Yemen, Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and elsewhere in the world?
Multilateralism is the only way forward. Multilateralism is the only way that we will be able to guarantee that we do not once again go off the edge of the cliff. But for multilateralism to survive, we have to make sure that it is felt by the constituents, our constituents, meaning what the Charter says about we the peoples of the world. We the peoples should feel that these organizations and these conferences, the multilateralism, the whole system is relevant, that we work for them. And in order for that to happen, we need to be working, responding on time. We should be responding with clarity. We should be responding with means to resolve these issues. I always refer to former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's quote in his biography, where he says that as a young boy on the Korean Peninsula, when the war was raging, he lost all hope on multilateralism. But then when he saw the blue helmets come onto the Korean Peninsula, the peacekeepers come on, and then that is where his trust and confidence in multilateralism renewed. And then he later became to be the Secretary General of this organization. Now, there are so many young Ban Ki-moons around the world, the 1.8 billion young Ban Ki-moons around the world. For them, they need the blue helmets to be seen. They need blue helmets carrying the vaccine for them. They need the blue helmets. What I mean by blue helmets is not only the peacekeepers, but also the blue and white flag bearers. We need the blue and white flag bearers to be delivering vaccine on time. We need the blue and white flag bearers to be responding to poverty alleviation. We need the blue and white flag bearers to be responding in time to climate issues. We need results to be seen by we the peoples, our constituents. Unless that happens, the credibility of multilateralism is going to continue to erode, and that is not what we want for the future. We want a future where these young 1.8 billion youth believes that the only way out of any situation is through peaceful means, and that is through multilateralism.
Just before you go, Mr. President, I understand there are a couple of United Nations agencies and organizations that are committed towards ending poverty and world hunger. Poverty is one of the major issues we face on the African continent. I know you're a man of hope, and you always see the glass half full than empty. You're an optimist. What would be your advice to a way out of this challenge of hunger? And do you think would have a continent that would be rid of poverty and hunger in the nearest future?
The Secretary General convened the World Food Summit this year. I addressed the food summit and my message was very clear that we produce the world collectively, we produce many times over than what is required to keep the world fed. So better distribution, better use, less wastage, and more international cooperation through which we will be able to make sure that world is not hungry. We need the transfer of technology, we need financing to the LDCs to be given at affordable ways so that the LDCs will not continue to pile up debt and then continue to go hungry. The way out is very clear. We just need to make sure that we go on that route.
Mr. President, I would like to say a very big thank you to you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Your Excellency. Thanks for taking time out to talk to us on News Central TV here in Lagos, Nigeria. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
And that's it on today's edition of NC Exclusive. Our guest has been His Excellency Ambassador Abdulla Shahid, the 76th President, the President of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, and Benga Aborowa. Until next time on NC Exclusive.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today.